Warning, this content may be upsetting or disturbing to some audiences. Cops of Reddit, what has so far been the creepiest call you've ever had to respond to and what happened? Got a call for a missing child, got to the home to find the mother highly distressed, and not sure what to do. I called in everyone to first search the home and property. I decided to search the backyard since it was a large wooded lot with no visible fence. He had basically gotten strangled to death on the fence. He must have been climbing on it, fell, and got his hooded sweatshirt caught on it. The worst part for me was having to call it in on the radio, knowing the mother might hear it inside from one of the other officers' radio. Working third shift on Halloween night, I'm out by one of our smaller lakes just outside the city limits. Kids love to go out and drink, which is surrounded by some very nice houses. Going through the neighborhood, each of the roads ends at a small 2-lane road that surrounds the lake. I back up to see what it was and I see a guy hanging. At first I thought it was a Halloween decoration. The neighborhood is really into decorating for every holiday. So I stop, get out, and as soon as my flashlight hits him I realize, nope, no decoration, he dead. Turns out he was a 20-year-old that was devastated about his girlfriend breaking up with him, and she lived in the last house on that block where she would see him the next morning when she looked out her window. We responded to a burglary alarm at a mortuary and found that one of the rear doors was left open. Policy now dictates that the entire building needs to be cleared, searched, to confirm that it was a false alarm, which most are. It's the middle of the night and totally dark. We walk into one of the rooms and see a body on a table. It appeared that it was waiting to be processed, possibly embalmed, by the mortician. It smelled like a mildly decomposing body. Suddenly I see a shadow to my right and I shine my light there and find nothing out of the ordinary. The search was completed more expeditiously than normal after that. Nothing was found. It was a stormy night on the Oregon coast. A lady was driving drunk and ran into the back of a parked school bus. When she did, her car caught on fire, but she was able to escape. When I found her slowly walking down a side street, I was telling her to stop and turn around. Her tongue was sticking straight out the top of her neck, and she was trying to talk. She ended up surviving but needed tons of plastic surgery. My uncle was a sergeant and had to be called several times out to a house for domestic abuse. This older guy had some young 18-year-old. He would pay for the guy to swallow certain objects like paper clips and human hair. He would then put them in an envelope and file them. I responded to a report of an unresponsive infant. When I arrived, all the family members were standing around casually in the front yard pointing into the house. I found the baby in the back room laying on her back on a bare mattress. I started CPR, but realized the baby was probably already deceased. I learned she was the mother's second suspicious SIDS death, and I had her other children removed from her care. The difficult part was when I left the scene and went to the ER to see what came of the situation. Got a call that someone wasn't answering their phone or the doorbell. We got to the house and noticed that every window was blinded by either curtains or pieces of paper. We rang the doorbell and yelled through the letterbox, but there was no answer. We opened the door and got inside. There was bread on the table and juice or milk in the glasses. Children's toys scattered all around. Then I saw a note that gave me the chills. It was a suicide note. As the door was locked from the inside, the person had to be in the house. Preparing myself for slit wrists or throats, I opened the door slowly, but there was nothing. Finally, one more room left, which was the attic. We walked slowly up the stairs and we found the resident there, hanging from a beam. My father-in-law is sitting beside me, so I asked him. He is a retired sheriff and was a deputy before that. He was the first responder to an accident. A truckload of farm workers were coming back from the fields. My Phil held her as she moaned and eventually died in his arms. He says he still hears her sounds in his head all these years later. My cousin is a cop and he responded to a call on Valentine's Day night. A 12-year-old girl called in to say her mother had blown her brains out in the living room. I guess her and her brother were getting ready for dinner and the mom just shot herself. Kids were sitting outside when he arrived. To this day I can't imagine Valentine's Day for them. But I know that is something that stuck with him, seeing that. Not a cop, but a correctional officer in Texas. One time a guy slit the forearm side of his elbows, where it bends. He laid there in a big puddle of his own blood. I was one of the responders that day. I'll never forget it. As soon as you entered the cell, the smell just hit you. Blood has a strong metallic smell, which I never realized before. He'd been laying there a while, so the blood had coagulated, which again, I did not expect. It was pretty disturbing because I didn't expect any of it, nor was I able to mentally prepare for it. We're not really medically trained, so all of it was completely surprising to me. Not a cop myself, but my dad is, and I asked him this one time. He told me it was when he went to this one house because a woman had called and said that men were breaking into the house. He gets there and he said it was immediately very clear that the woman was not exactly all together mentally. He calms her down, checks around the house for any signs of entry or just anything weird, and there's absolutely nothing that would indicate that anyone had been trying to or had been successful in breaking in. To make her feel better, he did a sweep of the whole house to see if there was anyone else inside, which there wasn't. He said the one thing that made it creepy for him was the fact that every few minutes she'd say something like, "Oh, they're here again," or "He's right behind us, I can feel it." Ex-cop, I worked in a high-tech task force agency conducting computer forensics investigations. Lots of child porn. Lots. Anyways, we were doing a multi-agency search warrant sweep in large metro area in California. He lived with his disabled wife, no kids, and she had mobility issues, mostly stayed downstairs, and had not been upstairs for years. We go upstairs, and this guy has a legitimate masturbation station set up in one of the bedrooms that had an outside padlock on it. It was dark, the windows were covered, and he had baby dolls with their holes cut out all over the room and some of their mouths cut out for impromptu baby sex doll. Some of the heads were removed and scattered on the floor. This guy had serious issues. Not me, but my cousin. He got a call one night that two brothers, ages 4 and 6, were found dead in a near-empty swimming pool. There was like 6 to 8 inches of water in the pool, and the call came from their dad. They never could charge the man, but it is widely believed that he killed his 2 sons. UK, got called to assist ambulance at an address because they were struggling with a woman who had an apparent seizure. We got there and she's this tiny skinny little Singaporean lady who's being held down on the floor by a paramedic. Her eyes are all black and red, no white. It takes me, 200 pounds, my partner for the evening, tilde 180 pounds, plus 3 paramedics to hold her down. All the time she's struggling and trying to bite with veins popping out of her neck. Her husband, who seems weirdly unfazed by the whole thing, tells us this has been happening since she last went to Singapore and got sick after visiting a holy site. Usually her sister has to stop it by putting this powder on her forehead in a cross, but unfortunately she's out of the country. In the end she was taken to hospital for a mental health assessment by the paramedics. I often wonder what the outcome was but have no way of finding out, unfortunately. Are we accepting not me but a cop I know stories? My cousin is on in a major city. Apparently 911 got a call from a 6-year-old claiming vehemently that there was a zombie outside of his house on the street. So a patrol car swings around to see what's up. Turns out a tweaker on meth gouged out his own eyes, had blood dripping down from the empty sockets, and was stumbling around blindly with his hands stretched out in front of him. Goddamn, turns out the kid was telling the truth. For some reason, the suicides always hit me the hardest. I had a good friend that killed himself in high school, so suicide is a touchy thing not just for everyone but especially for those who have personal experience with it. I've seen 3 suicides by gun, 2 hangings, and a handful that did it intentionally by using drugs of some sort or other methods. Long story short, guy shot himself in his garage with a .357 Magnum. I have a pretty strong stomach, thankfully because of experience, but I believe I accidentally stepped on a piece of his eye. I repeated the cleaning process at home, too. Now sure, that's not exactly creepy, just disturbing. But here's this one. We get a call from the hotel off the interstate. Employees went to clean a room and found a note on the bathroom door, which was closed and locked. It read, "Don't come in. Call 911. So the front desk did just that. We get there and she shows us the room. We try knocking on the bathroom door. No answer. She was concerned because none of the employees ever remember the guest checking out. My partner gets the door open, and it was like something off of a horror movie. Guy was in the tub, completely naked. Knife on the floor, just next to the tub. I've never seen so much blood in my 10+ year career. His face was pale white and it appeared as he was frowning. He didn't appear to be breathing. Call a medic, my partner says. I just look at him and say, no. Dude's dead. I'm not touching him. You can check if you want, but we need to get our supervisor, an EVT, and detective here. I could recognize a dead guy when I saw one. Called for another car and told dispatch to contact our evidence technicians and a detective, when I hear my partner scream and exclaim, "OFSky shit." I run back over there and he's wide-eyed staring at the body. He just moved. That Fker's alive, man. He moved. What are you talking about? He has a fucking pulse. It's faint as hell but he has it. His leg moved under the water when I tried checking for it. Sure enough, I put on my big boy undies and could barely feel a pulse on this guy. Medic called and they rushed him to the ER. Turned out he did the cutting just minutes before the cleaning maid found the note, so surprisingly he barely lived. Got a report of a missing husband. He told his wife and family of 6 children that he was going to get his tires changed, but never returned, and this was 12 hours ago. The strange thing about this report though was that he emptied his personal bank account into his wife's this morning as well. On a hunch, I asked his 14-year-old boy if there were any areas in the mountains nearby that his father enjoyed going, and the son identified a road about 10 miles away. It was nearing midnight, but I decided to drive to the top of this old and abandoned Forest Service road. The snow-laid gravel road had some sign of travel, but no real indication of how fresh the vehicle tracks could be. As I reached the top of the road after an hour of travel, I was honestly surprised that I did not find his black truck. I spent the drive back down thinking about gut feelings and how they are unreliable, but that I somehow felt different about this one. Nonetheless, I decided to check a single of these secondary roads, and about 3/4s of the way down I picked a road at random to check, and sure enough my headlights lit up the back end of a black truck about 100 yards past the first corner. I radioed that I had found the truck, parked my vehicle, and traveled the 20 feet to his truck with my heart beating like I was doing it at a sprint rather than a normal walk. What I found inside was a mess of brains and blood caused by a self-inflicted shotgun wound under the chin. I'll save you from the description. I got a call that there was an abandoned truck on the highway. I was only a mile or 2 away, so I headed there. It was in the middle of these curves, with a mountain wall on one side, and a drop-off to a creek on the other side. It was dark, probably around midnight. I pull up and there it is, light blue. Sitting there. I have no backup. I have no idea where the driver is. I walk up, gun out, inhaling the strong alcohol vapors. No one to be found. I call for a tow truck. Meanwhile I have to wait, in the dark, in the middle of blind curves, with no idea where the driver is or why he left it. This may be quite tame compared to other posts, but so far it's the creepiest for myself. An elderly woman had called in reporting that a man carrying a drawstring bag was walking around her and her husband's property. She described the man as walking like a zombie and was looking down towards the ground the entire time. She wasn't able to tell if the man was attempting to break in or not. My partner and I were about 15 minutes away when the call came in from dispatch. My partner and I quickly searched the area around the cornfield, then went to the house. As I took down some information from both the husband and wife, my partner searched the property for any signs of tampering but found nothing. 2 adults reported missing, parents of 2 adult children, 1 male, 1 female. Alerts are in place for the missing people's credit cards. The father's credit card hits on a purchase at a jewelry store where an engagement ring was purchased. It leads us to the son who made the purchase of the ring. The son led us to the gravesite and we began the process of recovery. Both mom and dad had black garbage bags over their heads being held in place by duct tape around their necks. The sight of the bodies, especially their faces once the bags were removed, and the smell is something I'll never forget. I was called out to negotiate with a 17-year-old female who had barricaded herself in a bathroom with multiple knives and scissors. She'd done it right too. SWAT ended up going through the sheetrock wall. When SWAT pulled her out, she had completed multiple circumcisions on herself with the scissors, completely cut her nipples off, and had sodomized herself multiple times with multiple steak knives. The kicker was, she was talking the whole time and her tone or volume never changed. Or, more likely, she never felt it. The human mind is scary as FCK. Man, this was probably 2010, 2011. I was really new. Call came I'm as an unknown problem. Basically the 911 was so effed up, even dispatch didn't know what to call it. Turned out this guy had just murdered his stepfather and then walked to his grandparents' house to kill them as well. He missed her brain by about 1/8 of an inch, so she did not die. Instead she came running out of the house when we got there, knife sticking out of her effing eye, and the compass was spinning around because she was moving. If you made it to the end of the video, Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.